What's the story, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? How are we all getting on? There is some big games happening this weekend in the Premier League. Some big matches, some big discussion, some big talking points worth mentioning going into this weekend's games. You've got Newcastle taking on Man City. Are Newcastle title contenders? That's the title of this video. We'll be discussing that a little bit later on. And of course, how will Spurs get on against Manchester United? Man United definitely flattered to deceive against Wolves on Monday night, in my opinion. They were far from convincing and were definitely a lot more poor than I would have expected at the start of the season. And we will be looking at my fantasy football team as well, and obviously the fantasy football league that I've created with some of you lads in there. We'll be seeing who's top in the league. We'll be discussing my points obviously from the weekend gone, and we'll be discussing maybe some potential changes. And of course, we will be predicting every game in the Premier League this weekend. So if you're new to the channel, hit the like button and subscribe. Cheers to anyone who subscribed in the last week or so, obviously with a couple of new videos on there. Much appreciated. Let me know who you support in the comments down below. Be curious to know. And, well, one thing left to do. Let's get into it. So we'll start by reminding ourselves ever so slightly of how the results finished last weekend. Now, I won't go into big detail on these because all of you lads obviously know what happened, and you know, you've seen all the reactions in the games and everything else, but obviously you'll see on screen there. In terms of any surprises, there wasn't really any big shock, really, was there? As I said, I think Man United were a lot more poor than we would have expected against Wolves. I think Wolves are actually very, very good. They played really, really well last night, in fairness, or on Monday night. Chelsea-Liverpool, obviously as a Liverpool fan, that game probably went the way I expected in terms of how the game was gone. I expected us to start strong. I expected us to start fast. But I thought the more the game went on, the more Chelsea would expose Liverpool's vulnerabilities at the back, and obviously without a defensive midfielder. The only difference is Chelsea don't have any good players who can score goals right now, in my opinion, and that's the reason why they didn't beat us. Spurs, like, their draw away against Brentford actually wasn't the worst result in the world, considering everything that's happened there with Kane leaving. And Brentford's a tough place to go. Like, usually they take points off the big team, so a draw away there actually wasn't the worst result in the world for Tottenham, and I actually thought they played quite well. Newcastle, like, that probably was the big shock in terms of beating Villa in the way that they did. Villa, a good team, like, they're definitely no mugs, and to beat them in the way that they did is very impressive. And obviously Arsenal and Man City winning, no big surprises there. So yeah, no big shocks, and I suppose let's get into this week. And will there be any shocks this week? Let's discuss. So we'll go in order of the games being played this weekend, and that will start us off with Nottingham Forest against Sheffield United on Friday. It's a big game, this, like, two big clubs, two big fan bases. Forest, I suppose, they're looking like an established team now in the Premier League, in my opinion. Like, and I think the most impressive thing about Nottingham Forest, even going back to last season, is that they never get hammered usually. They never get battered. They always stick together. They're always fighting. They're always working hard. Like, you can look at them and tell there's obviously a serious lack of quality. But I think what they have over maybe some other teams in the league when it comes to the business end of the season in terms of fighting relegation is that Forest, they've been there and done it, but they have a lot of fight and togetherness. And the fans just won't stop backing them, in my opinion, because of the fact that they weren't even expected to be in the Premier League last season, considering where they'd been a few years previous to that. So I think Forest at home Friday night, the fans are going to be bang up for it. I worry about Sheffield United, to be honest with you. They've lost a lot of players. They've sold a lot of players in the transfer window. They don't seem to be reinvesting in their squad. They look like a team that's almost happy to go straight back down, like, looking at the ownership and everything else. And I think Forest are going to beat them. I think Tayo Awanui looks like a very good player. He was in great form in the business end of last season. He obviously scored against Arsenal again. Obviously scored against them last year, scored against them this season, obviously on the opening day. So I think Forest are going to be too strong for Sheffield United. I think this is a game that Forest will target. Like, in terms of staying up in the Premier League, this is a game Forest need to win. So I think they'll be on the front foot. They'll get after Sheffield, and I think they'll beat them 2-0. Moving on to the 3 o'clock kickoffs, we'll start with my own team, Liverpool, going up against Bournemouth. Massive game, this, for Liverpool, because, like, you look at our fixtures after this, we play Newcastle away, and then we play Villa at home, and then I think there's an international break maybe after that. So, like, there's a big worry here from a Liverpool point of view. Like, if we don't get anything from this game, we are in full-blown crisis. There's absolutely no doubt about it. We're already in a bit of a crisis with transfers right now, and I still stand by my prediction in terms of if we don't get the right players in between now and the end of the window, in my opinion, we need a centre-back and we need a defensive midfielder. You could argue we need 2 defensive midfielders, but beggars can't be choosers. If we get one established one in, with Bajcetic coming back from injury, a centre-back to come in and replace Gomez and at least challenge Kanate and Van Dijk, that would be something. I still think maybe we need an attacker. I know we're looking at the young lad Ben Doak, who looks good, but he's only 17. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's risky. It's risky with him, in my opinion. There's no guarantee that he'll go on and be a great player. Do you know that way? So, look, I think at home against Bournemouth, I think with how good our attack looked at times against Chelsea, Salah, I thought, was phenomenal in the first half. It was definitely a strange one. The Klopp subbed him in the second half. You know, I didn't really understand it, to be honest with you. Like, the young lad Ben Doak, who came on, wasn't really in the game either. So it was an odd one. And Harvey Elliott came. I know we looked better when Salah went off, but that was just because Harvey Elliott came on, I think, instead of Gakpo, and added a bit more in midfield for Liverpool. Look, our attack is looking very good. We've everyone fully fit, and I think we will be too strong for Bournemouth. I think we will cut them open. Obviously, this was the game last year where we beat them 9-0, and that was just a mental game. And it's mad to think how far Bournemouth have come since then. And they obviously beat us last season as well in the reverse fixture. So, look, I think we will beat Bournemouth. I think our attack should be too strong. I think, looking at the way we're set up at the moment, it's going to be quite chaotic watching Liverpool. There's going to be 4-3s, 3-2s. We're going to score a lot of goals, but we're going to concede a lot of goals. And I think this game is going to be like that, because Bournemouth will attack us. They will try and get in behind us. I think we'll beat them 3-1 is what I'm going to go with. I can't see us keeping a clean sheet. I think Solanke could maybe score. But Bournemouth have a good couple of players in there. And it'd be interesting to keep an eye on their manager as well, who's obviously done quite good things abroad. And I'll go with Liverpool 3-1. As I said, if we don't get at from this game, like if we don't win this game, I would really worry, just because going away to Newcastle next, very tough place to go. And then Villa at home has been a tricky one, is a tricky game as well, in my opinion. So, massive pressure on Liverpool to deliver here, and I think we will, to be fair. I'll go 3-1. We've got Fulham against Brentford. I thought Fulham were terrible against Everton, to be honest with you. They were cut open time and time again. They looked asleep for the entirety of the first half. They didn't look in the game at all. Mitrovic obviously goes off injured, which in a weird way might be a good thing for Fulham potentially, because maybe he won't leave now and maybe he'll come back when he returns from injury. But Fulham's a difficult one. Like, I do think they'll be in a relegation battle this year. I think they will struggle. But at the same time, to get that win away against Everton, like, that could be a huge win come the end of the season, in terms of taking the points away from Everton, and Fulham obviously winning the game as well. Brentford, look, Vissa obviously, if people would have seen my fantasy football, I had him on the bench. I've predicted that he'll have a good season this year. He could be a player that potentially could upset a lot of people in terms of surprising a lot of people. I fancy Brentford to turn Fulham over. I think Everton created a lot of chances against Fulham, and I think Fulham surely will be better this time around, and at home and everything else. But I fancy Brentford to do it. I fancy Brentford to beat them. I'm going to say 2-1. Wolves against Brighton. In fairness to Wolves, they really did themselves proud at Old Trafford, considering everything that's going on behind the scenes with Fulham at the minute. The lack of investment, the amount of players that they're losing, the likes of Adama Traore, Jimenez, Lopetegui's obviously left, Gary O'Neill's come in. But in fairness, they looked very good against Man United, and I thought they were the better team. And they were very, very unlucky not to win the game, or even at least get a draw. They should have got a Stonewall penalty at the end of the game, in my opinion. I don't know how that wasn't given. Like, Man United were very poor. We'll get on to them a little bit later, but Cunha in around midfield looks a serious player. I haven't heard too much about him, to be honest with you. And I was looking at it thinking, could he be an option maybe for Liverpool to get? But then again, you can't go out and buy a player off one game. Do you know what I mean? But he was absolutely outstanding. Pedro Neto looked very good. Wolves looked very bright, but Brighton, pardon the pun, like, they're a serious team, and they've a wealth of players available to them. Matoma's very good. Even with Caicedo leaving, McAllister leaving, they just don't look like they've missed a beat at all. And the mental thing is, I've seen that Brighton they're already in advanced talks, I think, with a replacement for Moses Caicedo. And it's mental how Brighton are just so much further ahead of other clubs in terms of recruitment, in terms of strategy. Like, they identified that replacement months ago before Caicedo's left. And it just goes to show, like, Liverpool and some other clubs as well should really take a note out of Brighton's book, because, like, Caicedo, he's only gone a day and Brighton nearly have a replacement wrapped up, and here's Liverpool trying to replace players who've left years ago. Do you know what I mean? But look, it's going to be interesting. It'll be a different game for Wolves, most definitely, because I think Brighton will play a lot better than what Man United played. But look, I think that, there'll be a bit more of a feel-good factor about Wolves, considering how they played against Man United, and I'm going to go with a draw. I'm going to go 1-1. I think Brighton, the thing about Brighton is that it was in a lot of these games last season away from home against mid-table clubs that they actually struggled in last year. I'm going to say 1-1. Luton against Burnley is postponed, obviously because of the fact that Luton's stadium is still under renovation. So we'll skip ahead to Spurs against Man United at 5:30 on Sky Sports. This is a very interesting one because Man United, as I said, looked very poor against Wolves. Very, very poor. They really struggled to get into the game. Casemiro looked a complete shell of himself. Marcus Rashford didn't look completely at it, and in the end they got completely out of jail. But look, what you would say is that, especially for the opening day of the season, the most important thing is the result. Performances will improve, performances will get better. Like, performances aren't huge at this stage. Like, you know Man United will get better, you know they will improve. But I think it's clear to see that they probably still need to do a bit of business. Midfield looks a little bit weak. Casemiro, like, he's been knocking around for a while now, and as we've seen with players down the years, you know, like, you can go downhill overnight. Like, it can look like that. Like, look, last season Fabinho went from probably one of the best defensive midfielders in the world to a complete shell of himself overnight, and now he's playing in Saudi Arabia. And I'm not saying that's going to happen with Casemiro. I think Casemiro has proven he's a better player than Fabinho over the last sort of 10 years or so, but players can downgrade very quickly. The miles on the clock can catch up with you. So I think Man United do need to go out and do business. And they are missing a striker. Højlund's obviously out with an injury at the minute. They need him in the side. And the problem is, like, he hasn't had a pre-season, so it's going to take him a lot of time to adapt. And I start to look at Man United and I do start to worry a bit more about them. I've predicted that they'll be in a title race this season. The more I look at it, I think they might be a little bit further off than that. But this is a big one because in these type of games last year, they struggled away from home against the traditional top 6. Against a lot of the top 10 last season, they struggled away from home. And look, Spurs at home, there's no pressure on them, no Harry Kane. I think in some ways it probably suits Ange Postecoglou because there's no pressure on him to really do much with Tottenham this year. A lot of people predicting Tottenham to finish outside the top 10 even. I've seen Paul Merson say that. So I don't think there's much pressure on Tottenham, and I think that could suit them. And I still think Tottenham could have a good season, and I think they're going to ruffle Man United ever so slightly. I think Son could have a big game. I don't know if Richarlison is the man they should be leading the line with, and I think they need to go out and get a proven striker who can score goals in this league, because I think Richarlison has proven that he is not that. So I think they will need to go out and get a striker into their side in the next couple of weeks. But I'm going to go for a draw. I think Man United will play better than what they played against Wolves. I think they have to, otherwise they'll lose this. So I'm going to go for another draw, and I'm going to say 1-1. Then we've got Man City versus Newcastle. Man City, yeah, like they looked as good as we expected against Burnley. It was actually the one score prediction I got right. Interesting enough, of my predictions last week, I got 4 correct. So it's good to know that I'm as bad as predicting Premier League games as I am at predicting GA matches. So at least we know we have those two things in common. But there we go. Man City looked excellent. Haaland, you know, it only took him a couple of minutes to score. Any idea that he was going to slow down this season? I think we've seen that he definitely won't be. And it's interesting, I was listening to Gary Neville the other night speaking about the fact that he doesn't think Man City will have as good a season this year as last season. I think they will, because I think the pressure is almost off now in terms of winning the Champions League. They don't even have to win the Champions League this season, because, you know, English clubs notoriously don't win back-to-back titles. You'd have to go back since the 80s, the last team that actually went and done it. I think City, you know, weirdly, there is pressure on them to deliver, but because they've been so good over the last couple of seasons, in some ways the pressure is off them, because if they have a bad season, I don't think there'll be a lot of people pointing fingers at them personally. And you're seeing apparently Lucas Paqueta has been linked to. That's an interesting transfer. I wouldn't have thought City would have been in for him personally. You know, you can't doubt Pep Guardiola in terms of the players he wants to bring in, and what an option that would be to replace someone like Mahrez, who obviously left in the summer. But obviously the title of this video are Newcastle United title contenders. It's an interesting topic, and the reason why I say that is because Newcastle looks so good against Aston Villa, and I think when you look at their team from 1 to 11, they have everything that you need. They have a brilliant goalkeeper in Nick Pope, one of the best in the league in my opinion. He proved that last season. Centre-backs wise, they're very, very strong in the likes of Sven Botman. Kieran Trippier is very good at right back. I think they will need a left back. Midfield is very, very strong with Bruno Guimaraes and Sandro Tonali, who took to the Premier League like a duck does to water. He was outstanding. He nearly scored 2 goals in the opening 10 minutes. What a start for him, for Sandro Tonali. And then attacking wise, they have everything that you need. You have a out and out top class striker in Alexander Isak. You've got Callum Wilson who can come off the bench. I think they've got everything there for the ingredients of a title contender. The reason why no one is considering them as a title contender is because of the fact that they're Newcastle United, and they obviously haven't been in a title race in 20 odd years or so, and this team of this version of this team have never been in a title race. But it's obviously early days for Eddie Howe, and I suppose you can't run before you can walk. But I think they have a chance of challenging this year. I really do. I think they have a lot of very, very good players. I think they have the investment there. If they want to go out and spend in January, they can do that. Don't get me wrong, they will have the distraction of the Champions League. But I look at it and think, don't get me wrong, I don't think they'll stick with Man City I don't think anyone will stick with Man City until, I think it's around April, March that Man City will start to pull away and steer clear of the likes of Arsenal and Newcastle, possibly Man United as well. But I think Newcastle, in my opinion, I think they're serious contenders, and I think they can get something from this game. I really do, because I think early stage of the season, I think Man City might struggle a little bit. I think Newcastle, they're a strong team, and they're going to be very, very tough to beat this year, in my opinion. Isak, as I said, could be one of the outside shouts for a Golden Boot contender this year. I think Haaland will win it, but I think Isak could be very, very close as well. So yeah, I think Newcastle couldn't get something from this game. I'm going to say it's going to be a draw. I think I'm going to go for another 1-1 draw, I think I've predicted 1-1 3 times in a row now, but I think this could be another draw. I really do. So yeah, I'm going to go 1-1. Aston Villa versus Everton. Everton are in big trouble this season, in my opinion, and the fact that, look, they played well against Fulham, don't get me wrong. They created chances and everything else, but that has been the case for Everton in the last couple of years. They can create chances and create opportunities. They just don't have anyone who can put the ball in the back of the net. Calvert-Lewin's always injured. Neil Maupay, he's a championship striker at best. They need to get someone in. They need to get a couple of players in. The good news is they haven't lost Onana just yet. As a Liverpool fan, I would definitely be interested in bringing him in. I think he'd be a great option for our midfield, in fairness. But obviously trying to take an Everton player, is kind of not such a done thing nowadays. Look, Everton showed some positive signs, but I think Villa are going to be bang up for this. Having been hammered against Newcastle, I think they're going to really pick apart Everton, and I think this is going to be a long day at the office for Everton. Moussa Diaby looked good for Villa, in fairness. You would expect Watkins to have a good season this year. I think it was very poor. I think the problem with Villa is that they're playing like a top 6 team without being a top 6 team, without having the players to be a top 6 team. They have a high line, they're trying to play expansive football, and they will get caught out playing that way, and more teams will have figured Villa out this season with the fact that Unai Emery came in halfway through a season and he took over a team that was in a relegation battle at the time. So teams will have figured Villa out a lot more, and I think they will struggle more this season, Villa. Don't get me wrong, I think they still will be in the top 10. But I've seen a few people predicting them to get to the top 6 or top 7. Don't see that happening personally. I've seen Gary Neville predict that. So I think Villa will beat Everton. I think they'll do it comfortably as well. And I'm going to say 3-0. West Ham versus Chelsea. Chelsea need a win. Don't get me wrong, they played very well against Liverpool. But let's not forget, I think they've only won 3 or 4 games in the entirety of this year in the Premier League. Disastrous end to last season, but they need a result. They need a win. If they don't win this game, fans could start getting on Pochettino's back over the next couple of weeks. But look, to be fair to Pochettino and to be fair to Chelsea, they're building such an ambitious project. And whatever you say about them spending loads of money and everything else, and is it correct? I don't know. But fair play to them for going out and getting the players that they need. You just worry that it could come back to bite them. It's mental. They've obviously beat Liverpool to Caicedo, and they've beaten Liverpool to Lavia as well. They're not going to play both of them at the same time, so Lavia is just going to be on the bench mainly. And it is kind of bizarre that he's chosen Chelsea over Liverpool, but is it because he sees the project, he sees the young players, he sees Liverpool's lack of ambition? I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, look, I think Chelsea will win this game. There is a feel-good factor about them. I think West Ham have been slow starters in the last couple of years in the Premier League. They didn't look particularly great against Bournemouth, in my opinion. I think Bournemouth should have beaten them. I'm going to go with Chelsea to do the business. The only problem is Chelsea, there's a lack of goals in the side. Nicholas Jackson, is he cut out for the Premier League? I'm not entirely sure. He missed a couple of big chances. Raheem Sterling, will get you the odd couple of goals. But that's the problem with Chelsea is goals. But I think they will do the business, and I'm going to say 1-0. And last but not least, then, we have Crystal Palace against Arsenal. What's going to happen here? I think Arsenal are going to win comfortably, to be honest with you. They looked very good against Forest, I felt. It felt like towards the end of the game, they struggled ever so slightly. Saka looked as good as he did last season. And look, obviously Timber's injury will be, a big injury in the next couple of months or whatever. Obviously torn his ACL. But I think Arsenal are in good steads. And I think Palace is just such a strange one. Like, they've such a boring season in many ways. Like, they're just going to be around mid-table. They're going to get results here and there and cause the odd couple of shocks. But I don't see it happening in this game. I think Arsenal will be too good, too fast, too quick for Crystal Palace, and I'm going to say 3-1. Okay, so it's at that time then where we'll run through some fantasy football and how we got on at the weekend. So I got 63 points. You'll see there, one below the average of 64. We had Areola, who came in as a substitution for Verbruggen. So that gamble of bringing in Verbruggen as the Brighton goalkeeper, I think, unfortunately, is back forward. I think Jason Steele started. I think he will be the main man between the sticks for Brighton. In the end, Jason Steele didn't even keep a clean sheet. So in the end, it actually wouldn't have mattered. But Areola came in anyway as a substitution. Zuma, Estupiñán, Saliba. It was okay. Like, Zuma could have done better. I think we could probably get a better defender in there, in fairness. Midfield, Salah with 5, Szoboszlai with 2, Martinelli with 5, Matoma with 5, Kulusevski with 2. Haaland, look, I think he's the obvious one. I think everyone has Haaland in as their captain, and he got 26, so no surprises there. And Darwin Núñez in with 1. The big disappointment, though, Vissa, I obviously got him in, and he got 9. And I'm kind of looking at it thinking, will Darwin Núñez consistently start for Liverpool? I don't think he will, to be honest with you. Although Jota, I thought, was very poor for Liverpool the other day as well. So maybe Darwin will come in this weekend. So it's an interesting one. In terms of changes, like, I'm looking at it thinking Szoboszlai, I think, could be a very good player for Liverpool. But the problem is, right now, I think Liverpool's midfield is going to really struggle. And I think we're going to concede a lot of goals. And for that, Szoboszlai's rating per game is obviously going to go down. And is he going to score and assist that much? I don't really know. So I might look to get rid of Szoboszlai. Kulusevski I might look to get rid of at some point as well. And maybe Zuma. But I'm kind of looking at it in terms of transfers. I'm thinking Diaby could be a good show from Aston Villa. He scored against Newcastle and he actually looked quite bright, I felt at times. And with Villa playing Everton this weekend, I think Villa are going to get a lot of joy, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I'd be kind of looking at it thinking maybe Diaby might be a good show. Or maybe even Ollie Watkins might be a good show instead of Darwin Núñez. But I do have a sneaky feeling Darwin Núñez might start. But I think what I might do is I might maybe sub out Kulusevski, bring in Vissa, and then maybe take out Szoboszlai for Diaby. I think that might be a good change. I think we will need to get a goalkeeping situation sorted here at some point. But I think Areola, I can't see Chelsea scoring more than a goal. And I wouldn't be surprised if West Ham kept the clean sheet in that game, to be honest with you. So I think I might stick with Areola in between the sticks. But that's how we got on. We'll see what transfers we make, obviously, when next week comes around. But I am looking at it and thinking Szoboszlai out, Moussa Diaby in from Aston Villa, I think is going to be, obviously you've one free substitution each week. So I think that's the one I'm going to go with. The rest of the team I'm fairly happy with. I think I'll put Kulusevski on the bench. I'll bring Vissa in. And I think I'll be fairly happy with that team for this week's games. So fair play to a lot of you lads who did join this league. Very much appreciated. Obviously, a lot of you lads joined from the Gaelic Games Fan TV post I put up, obviously, on Instagram. And I don't know if most of you lads are here, but a few of you probably are. And we've got James Curran, Rhythm of Van Dijk. Great name, sitting there in first. I think I'm banging mid-table in 20th. Right there with 63 points. Some of these team names, by the way, that some of you lads are coming up with, like Mother of Moses. But there we go. So that's how the league is looking. Obviously, it's only game week 1. So there's plenty of time yet. And as I said, I will definitely do a prize for whoever wins the league. Maybe a jersey of your choice or something like that when the season comes to a close. And if by chance I somehow happen to win the league, which, let's be honest, is not going to happen. Like, I'm definitely not going to win the league. Like, there's no way I'm going to win it. But if I do, I'll give a prize to who finishes second. I think that's only fair because I can't give a prize to myself. That would make, that would make no sense. But there we go. Anyway, that's my fantasy football for the week, and they are my predictions. Let me know your predictions for this weekend's games. And do you think Newcastle United, could they challenge for the Premier League? I think they could, I think they mightn't be too, I think they could definitely ruffle a few feathers. And the fact that a lot of people aren't even thinking they'll get in the top 4, top 5, I think is surprising. But there we go. So yeah, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. My name's Aaron. Speak to you soon.